Do you believe that David Cameron has tried too hard to win over far-right voters in response to the rise of Ukip and such like, ultimately alienating long-term Conservative voters?
OK, let's start with you, please, Ian.
I'd agree 100%, yes. I think there's been a problem that UKIP has made all politics drift to the right with xenophobic rhetoric, which other parties have pandered to. And I think it's been a real scar, really, on British politics that all the political parties are pandering to this. I think for the Conservatives in particular, I think David Cameron was expressing a really interesting form of modern conservatism in opposition, which was taken to one side slightly by the austerity programme, but then also I think there was a slight panic within the party at the rise of UKIP. And it has been detrimental what's happened. Of course, the voters are in the centre ground. And it's also basically going for voters who are, in the main, quite old, and it's putting off the young. And I just think for any business, for any product, for any party, that's not a wise thing to do. You should be looking to the future, not to the past.
So, Sam, is the Conservative Party looking to the past, not the future?
The Conservative Party, I would say, is the party that is the future. Now, we came into government in 2010. We came into government in 2010 when the country was on the brink of bankruptcy, and we had to really get the economy back on track. Now, today we have the fastest growing economy in the developed world. We've been able to deliver tax cuts for about 25 million people. And when I say that, that means that most people are getting £825 off their tax a year. We've got the highest job rate we've had since records began. That is not a party that is looking to the past. That is a party that understands that to achieve anything in society, we've got to get the economy right first. And that is what we've focused on. And that is what our futures are ultimately about, because that's how we can realise our aspirations.
But to go back to the question, are you drifting to the right?
No, I don't believe we're drifting to the right or to the left. I think we're delivering for the British people. What the British people want is they want to know that if they go to work, firstly, there is work for them to do, that they can keep more of what they earn. If they want to buy a home, they should be able to, they should get help to buy that home, that the school that they can send their children to will be an excellent school that will have a future for their children, that university students will come out knowing that their prospects are better than the prospects of their parents. That's not drifting to the right, that is delivering, and that is about making our country great again.
Harry, what do you think about it? You asked the question.
When you're talking about not drifting to the right, would you rule out a formal coalition with UKIP? Would that not be part of the future Conservative plans?
Well, no, you can't do that.
Our plan is to win an outright majority.
Louisa's pretty clear you can't do that,
yes.
Sam.
You're not doing that.
Thank you, Louisa. Our plan is to win an outright Conservative majority and to be able to deliver some of the great things that we have done in this government. Now, I talked about tax cuts, but there is a lot more we can do to make sure that we secure that future for Britain. The Prime Minister has talked, for example, that there are too many people who are caught paying 40p tax who shouldn't be paying the 40p tax. We want to do more around that. We want to do more in the north of England. The Chancellor talked about the Northern Powerhouse and having a national recovery. That is, again, not drifting to the right. That is making sure that everyone shares in the prosperity of this country.
OK, Louisa, you were kind of shaking your head when the prospect of a UKIP Conservative coalition was mentioned.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I'm not a big UKIP fan. I think I agree with you. There has to be... I think Conservative Party and all parties have to acknowledge some kind of what UKIP is talking about. Like, I know immigration is a big thing. I'm for immigration. But I think that we have to acknowledge that a lot of people's noses have been put out of joint by what Labour previously did with regards to immigration. So I don't think that Conservatives have drifted too far to the right, but I think they have to nod their head and acknowledge what is going on in modern Britain. And that is an issue for a lot of people. I don't think they're trying to do it to win votes, though.
OK. They probably are trying to win votes.
Tina,
what are people saying online?
Lots of comments are starting to come in. Let's get a couple which are about UKIP. This one, do you feel threatened by Nigel Farage and UKIP? Remember, the hashtag is #AskATory. And this one from Anna, does it not worry you that 2 MPs have defected to UKIP from your party, Sam?
Well, I mean, take the first question about Nigel Farage and whether we're worried about him. I'm not at all, because ultimately Nigel Farage can't deliver a lot of the things that he's talking about. So, firstly, he talks about a referendum on our relationship with Europe. Now, Nigel Farage may want it, but he's never going to be in a position to form a government to deliver a say for the British people in terms of our relationship with Europe. Anyone who's under the age of 58 has not had a say in our relationships with Europe, and I think people should have a say. But he can't deliver it, Labour won't deliver it, we can, so there's no reason
You
to
say
be
he
afraid
can't
of it.
deliver, but he's taken 2 of your MPs. Does that worry you, is the question? Second question.
Well, that's the second. The second question is he's taken 2 of our MPs. They decided to defect. We fought, certainly the Rochester, we fought both by-elections strong and hard. The people decided in those constituencies to vote for them. Now there's another election on the 7th of May. Let's see what seats UKIP has then.
OK. Yeah, gentleman here.
In the last election, you couldn't win what was arguably a 3-horse race. So now you've got big people like UKIP coming in, stealing votes. You couldn't win a full majority then, so what makes you think you can win that now when there's more people in play?
It's a great question. Now, elections, I believe, come down to 2 things. Firstly, if you're in government, your track record and your plan for the future. And if you're not in government, your plans to change things. Now, there can only be 1 of 2 people who could be Prime Minister after the election, David Cameron or Ed Miliband. And Ed Miliband and Ed Balls were Gordon Brown's henchmen when we were on the brink of financial bankruptcy as a country. Now, as a government, I think we have a strong track record, which during the course of the election, we're going to be talking to the British people about. And I believe that on the basis of our track record, a growing economy that is allowing us to invest in public services and secure the future, not just for old people, but also for the younger generation, that we believe that the British people will make the right decision. Now, it's not for me as a politician to get into who's where in the polls. That's not my job. My job is to come here and explain to you what we're doing as a government and hopefully convince you to vote for us on May the 7th.
So, Toby, coming on this, is it getting harder now for the Conservatives to win a majority than it was, say, in 2010? And if so, why?
I think it's marginally harder because of the UKIP surge. But I wouldn't be surprised if UKIP support sinks to single digits in the election in, just over 6 weeks' time. I think that the main impact, to go back to the original question, that UKIP has had on the Prime Minister is to prompt him to promise to hold an in-out EU referendum in 2017, as Sam said. And I think that a lot of UKIP voters, who, after all, until quite recently, were really only in politics because they were interested in that particular issue about Britain's membership of the EU, I think once they recognise that the only way to get the referendum, the in-out EU referendum they've been campaigning for decades, in some cases, the only way to do that will be to vote Conservative. And I think it's difficult for Ed Miliband to say it's wrong to have an EU referendum. Why is it wrong to ask people to vote on a question, as Sam said, they haven't had a chance to vote about for at least 58 years, since 1975. It's particularly difficult for Nick Clegg to oppose the EU referendum because it was a Lib Dem policy going into the last general election. So I think that will succeed in persuading a lot of UKIP voters to come and vote Conservative.
Do you think that's right, Ian?
No, I think, if I can go back to your original question, there is, first of all, a mythology about the Conservatives not doing well at the last election. Actually, they gained the most seats for nearly a century, so they actually did pretty well. The problem was that a substantial amount of the public who might have voted for them distrusted them on public services. They thought they hadn't modernised enough and couldn't trust them on issues like health and education, and that was a problem. The Conservative Party hadn't modernised enough to be in touch with the modern world. I think where we get to now with UKIP is, I don't think it is just about the referendum or just about immigration. It's about a sector of society which feels very disenchanted with the speed of change in the world and feels worried, perhaps understandably in some cases, about globalisation and about the very rapid changes that we've gone through in our society and in our country. And they've gone to a protest party, namely UKIP. I don't think it really is, and the studies show that actually it's not really about the issues. They just want someone to give Westminster a bloody nose.
OK, I'm going to take a couple of quick comments from the audience. Yeah, lady here has been very patient.
OK, so a lot of the arguments you've been making come down to this idea of British values, a term that's been thrown around recently, especially with, for example, Theresa May and her argument against radicalisation. Now, the problem I have with the idea of British values is, who are you to decide what is a British value? Now, I don't understand when we're talking about things like immigration, when we're talking about things like same-sex marriage, like the things that you've been opposing in the past, a lot of your prominent MPs and other representatives. How can you say that you embody British values and you can impose them, decide who is a citizen or not, based on whether or not they reflect British values? I don't understand where this has come from.
OK, so how do you quantify British values?
There are values that bind us together as a nation, as a country. My parents, immigrants, they came here in the early 70s and worked, and I was born here. I lived in Ghana for a bit, and I came back. Yeah, and one of the things that binds us together as a nation is, firstly, tolerance. It is a tolerant country. The other thing that binds us together is belief in individual liberty, belief in the rule of law, belief in democracy. These are all things that bind us together as a nation that other countries, not every country in the world, holds them as dear as we do in this country. And I think it is right to say that as a country, we believe in tolerance. We tolerate a whole spectrum of views, and that if you are in this country, you subscribe to those values. I'm a minister in education, where we have been talking about fundamental British values within the school system and promoting them. And I think as a country, we shouldn't be shy of what makes us unique, but also what part of what we gave to the world. These are values that we gave to. I think we should promote them, and we should be proud of them, and we should live them.